At midnight, my wife called me. Help! I was robbed and abandoned 120 miles from home. When I arrived, I found my wife shivering in the snow. She had been thrown out by my son-in-law and my daughter. The next day, I knocked on their door with a surprise. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. At 56 years old, I thought I'd heard every possible emergency phone call. 28 years of marriage teaches you to expect the unexpected. But nothing could have prepared me for Joan's voice at 3 in the morning, shaking with a terror I'd never heard before. "Ryan, please, I need help. They left me here." I bolted upright, instantly awake. Joan's voice was barely a whisper, broken by what sounded like chattering teeth. In the background, I could hear wind howling. "Where are you? What happened?" "I'm at some gas station. Miller's Corner, I think. Route 47. Her voice cracked. "Ryan, I'm so cold. My phone's almost dead." Miller's Corner? That was nearly 200 miles from our house. What the hell was Joan doing there in the middle of the night? "Stay exactly where you are. I'm coming to get you right now." I threw on clothes faster than I had in years, my hands shaking as I fumbled with my keys. The drive felt endless. Every mile marker seemed to mock me as I pushed my truck harder through the empty highways. Joan had sounded so small, so broken. In 28 years of marriage, I'd never heard her like that. When I finally pulled into the gas station parking lot, I spotted her immediately. Joan was huddled against the building's brick wall, wrapped in what looked like a thin jacket that was completely inadequate for the freezing February night. Her gray hair was disheveled, and even from a distance, I could see her whole body trembling. "Joan!" I called out, rushing toward her. She looked up, and my heart nearly stopped. Her face was pale, almost blue from the cold, but her eyes held something I'd never seen before. Pure, raw fear. "Oh God, Ryan." She collapsed into my arms, and I could feel how cold she was, even through her jacket. "I didn't think you'd come." "Of course I came. What happened? Where's your car?" Joan pulled back slightly, and that's when I noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Lily, she took my keys. She said I wasn't welcome anymore." Lily, our 32-year-old daughter, the same daughter who called every Sunday, who brought her husband Marcus over for dinner every month, who had seemed like such a devoted child. "Lily did this to you?" I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. Joan nodded, fresh tears starting to fall. "She's so angry, Ryan. She said things, terrible things. Marcus was just standing there, watching. Then she told me to get out and figure out my own way home." I helped Joan into the truck, cranking the heat up as high as it would go. She was still shivering violently, and I could see her breath in small puffs despite the warming air. "We're going to talk about this when you're warm and safe," I said, pulling out of the gas station. "But right now, I need you to tell me if you're hurt." "I'm not hurt, not physically." She wrapped her arms around herself. "But Ryan," she looked at me like she hated me, like I was some stranger who had done something unforgivable. The drive home was mostly silent except for Joan's occasional sniffles and the heater working overtime. I kept glancing over at her, watching the color slowly return to her cheeks. But something was wrong beyond just this incident. Joan kept fidgeting with her wedding ring, a habit she only had when she was keeping something from me. "Joan, what aren't you telling me?" She stared out the passenger window for a long moment. "She found out about the money." "What money?" "The money I inherited from my mother. She found the papers." I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. "What papers?" "Your mother left you her house. We sold it 3 years ago." Joan finally turned to look at me, and I could see guilt written all over her face. "No, Ryan, there was more. Much more." "How much more?" "The property in Vermont. The one mother never told anyone about. It's worth $800,000. I nearly swerved off the road. $800,000. Joan's mother had died 5 years ago, and we'd gone through all her paperwork together. At least, I thought we had. "You've known about this for 5 years and never told me?" "I was going to tell you. I was planning to tell you." Joan's voice was getting smaller. But then I started thinking about what to do with it, and I made a decision. "What kind of decision?" Joan took a shaky breath. "I decided to leave it to the children's hospital, the one where Lily volunteers. I thought I thought it would be a beautiful surprise, a way to honor my mother's memory while helping children. The pieces were starting to come together, but they weren't forming a picture I liked. And Lily found out about this how? She was helping me organize some old papers last week. She found the deed and the appraisal. When she realized what it was worth, she assumed it would be part of her inheritance. Joan's voice dropped to almost a whisper. When I told her about my plans for the hospital, she exploded. I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine, but neither of us moved to get out. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. She called me selfish, Joan continued, staring at her hands. She said I was stealing from my own family. Marcus agreed with her. He said I was being manipulated by the hospital into giving away Lily's future. And you didn't think to discuss this with me first? Joan flinched. I wanted it to be my decision, my mother's money, my choice. I didn't want anyone influencing me, not even you. I understood the principle, but the execution was devastating. Joan had made a unilateral decision about nearly $1 million without telling her husband or daughter. Lily had discovered it by accident and felt betrayed. And now our family was fractured, maybe beyond repair. Ryan, there's something else. Joan's voice was so quiet I almost missed it. What else? She turned to face me fully, and I could see fear creeping back into her eyes. Lily said something before she left me at that gas station. She said she knew I was hiding other things too. She said she was going to find out everything I'd been keeping from her. The way Joan said it made my blood run cold. Because the truth was, Joan had always been private about her family's finances. Her mother had been eccentric, secretive about money. And if there was $800,000 Joan had hidden for 5 years, what else might there be? Joan, please tell me that's all of it. She looked away again, and I knew. There was more, much more. I need to get inside and warm up, she said instead of answering. We can talk about the rest tomorrow. As we walked toward our front door, I realized that finding Joan at that gas station was just the beginning. Whatever Lily had discovered, whatever had made her angry enough to abandon her own mother in the middle of nowhere, was bigger than an $800,000 property. And tomorrow, I was going to find out exactly how big. But first, I had a visit to pay to my daughter. Because no matter what Joan had hidden, no matter what mistakes she'd made, nobody treats my wife the way Lily had tonight. Nobody. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Joan's terrified face at that gas station, heard the tremor in her voice when she said Lily had looked at her with hatred. By 6 a.m, I gave up trying to sleep and made coffee, the silence in our kitchen feeling heavier than it ever had before. Joan came downstairs around 7, moving like someone twice her age. She'd changed into warm clothes, but she still looked fragile, breakable. The confident woman I'd married 28 years ago seemed to have disappeared somewhere on that highway last night. How are you feeling? I asked, pouring her a cup of coffee. Like I've lost my daughter. She sat down heavily at our kitchen table, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. Ryan, I keep thinking about the look in her eyes. She wasn't just angry, she was disgusted with me. I sat across from her, studying my wife's face. In the morning light, I could see she'd been crying again. But there was something else there too, something that made my stomach clench with dread. Joan, last night you said Lily thought you were hiding other things. What did you mean? She was quiet for so long, I thought she wasn't going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. There might be some stock certificates. From my father's side, might be. There are stock certificates. Joan set down her coffee with shaking hands. Blue chip stocks he bought in the 1970s. They've been sitting in a safety deposit box for 20 years. The knot in my stomach tightened. How much are they worth? I had them appraised last year, around $400,000. I stared at my wife, this woman I thought I knew completely. $600,000. She'd been sitting on over $1 million total, and I'd known nothing about it. Why, Joan? Why keep this from me? From Lily? Tears started flowing down her cheeks. Because I watched what money did to my family growing up. My father's siblings fighting over every penny when he died. My mother's sister trying to contest the will. I didn't want that poison in our lives. So you decided to hide it instead? I decided to protect us from it. Joan's voice grew stronger, defensive. I've been planning to give most of it away, the hospital, the animal shelter, maybe set up a small scholarship fund. I wanted to use it for good instead of letting it tear our family apart. But Joan, you're not protecting us by lying. You're creating exactly the situation you were trying to avoid. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I know that now. But I thought if I could just handle it quietly, make the donations without anyone knowing, it would be better for everyone. I got up and walked to the window, looking out at our backyard where Lily used to play as a child. The swing set was still there, rusty now, but holding memories of a simpler time when our biggest problem was whether she'd eat her vegetables. What exactly did Lily say to you last night? Joan's voice came from behind me, hollow and defeated. She said I was a liar and a thief. She said I'd been stealing her inheritance and pretending to be a good mother while I planned to leave her with nothing. And Marcus? Marcus was worse. Joan's voice turned bitter. He kept talking about how families are supposed to take care of each other, how selfish I was being. He said they'd been struggling to make ends meet while I was sitting on a fortune. That surprised me. Marcus was a software engineer, made good money. Lily worked part-time at the children's hospital, but they never seemed to be struggling financially. Struggling how? I don't know. Marcus mentioned something about student loans, credit card debt. He said they'd been too proud to ask for help, but finding out about the money felt like I'd been watching them suffer while I hoarded wealth. Something about that didn't sit right with me. Lily and Marcus lived in a nice house, drove decent cars, took vacations. If they were struggling, they'd hidden it well. Joan, when exactly did you plan to tell me about all this? She turned in her chair to face me. I was going to tell you next month, after I'd finalized the arrangements with the charities. I wanted to present it as a done deal so you wouldn't try to talk me out of it. Talk you out of giving away our money? It's not our money, Ryan. It was my parents' money. I inherited it. So it's my decision what to do with it. Technically, she was right. But practically, we'd been married for 28 years. We'd made every other financial decision together. The fact that she'd excluded me from something this significant felt like a betrayal almost as sharp as what Lily was feeling. So what's your plan now? I asked. I don't know. Joan looked lost, older than her 53 years. I can't give Lily the money now, not after the way she treated me. But I can't go through with donating it either, not when she's this angry. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and felt my blood pressure spike. Dad, we need to talk. Can you come over this afternoon? Without Mom, she owes us an explanation. I showed Joan the message. She read it and started crying again, harder this time. She can't even stand to be in the same room as me. Maybe that's for the best right now, I said, though it hurt to say it. Maybe I should go talk to her, try to understand her perspective. What if she convinces you that I'm wrong? What if you take her side? The question revealed how deeply Joan's confidence had been shaken. She wasn't just afraid of losing Lily anymore, she was afraid of losing me too. Joan, I'm angry that you kept this from me. I'm hurt that you didn't trust me enough to include me in these decisions. But I'm not going to abandon you. Relief flooded her face, but it was temporary. There's something else you need to know before you go see Lily. My heart sank. What now? Last night when she was yelling at me, she said she'd been talking to a lawyer. A lawyer? About what? About whether she could contest my will. About whether hiding assets from family members could be considered fraud. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. Lily wasn't just angry, she was considering legal action against her own mother. Did she say which lawyer? No, but Marcus seemed to know a lot about inheritance law. Too much. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw a woman who had made choices she thought were right, but had ended up creating a nightmare. The money she'd tried to protect our family from was doing exactly what she'd feared it would do, tearing us apart. I'm going to see Lily this afternoon, I said, and I'm going to find out exactly what's going on. What will you tell her? The truth, that you made mistakes, but you made them from love, not greed. I paused. And that no matter how angry she is, there's no excuse for leaving you stranded in the middle of nowhere. Joan nodded, but I could see doubt in her eyes. She wasn't sure love would be enough to fix this. Honestly, neither was I. But I was about to find out just how far my daughter was willing to go to get what she believed was rightfully hers. And something told me the answer was going to change everything I thought I knew about the family I'd spent my life building. I spent the morning pacing around our house, replaying every conversation I'd had with Lily over the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. Had she seemed more stressed about money? Had Marcus been dropping hints about financial troubles? The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I actually knew about my daughter's life. By noon, I couldn't wait any longer. I drove to Lily's house, a modest 2-story colonial in a decent neighborhood, about 20 minutes from ours. As I pulled into their driveway, I noticed Marcus's BMW was there too. Good. I wanted to hear from both of them. Lily answered the door before I could knock, as if she'd been watching for me. She looked tired, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup. But her eyes were hard, determined. "Dad!" She stepped aside to let me in, but there was no warmth in the gesture. "Lily, we need to talk about what happened last night." "You're right. We do." She led me into their living room, where Marcus was sitting on the couch with a laptop open and papers spread across the coffee table. Legal papers, from what I could see. "Marcus." I nodded at my son-in-law, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Brian, glad you could come." Marcus closed the laptop and gathered the papers. "We've been doing some research since last night." "Research into what?" Lily sat down across from me, her posture rigid. "Into what our legal options are when a family member hides assets and plans to disinherit their children." The accusation hit like a punch to the gut. "Lily, your mother wasn't trying to disinherit you. She was trying to do something good with money she inherited." "Something good?" Lily's voice rose. "Dad, do you have any idea how much money we're talking about? Your mother told me about the Vermont property and the stock certificates. I know it's significant." Marcus leaned forward. "Did she tell you about the life insurance policies?" My blood went cold. "What life insurance policies?" Lily and Marcus exchanged a look. "The ones she's been paying premiums on for 15 years. High-value policies in both her parents, even after they died." "That's impossible. You can't collect life insurance on people who are already dead." "No," Marcus said, his voice taking on a lecturing tone that immediately irritated me. "But you can keep paying premiums and collecting dividends on whole life policies. Your wife has been doing exactly that." I stared at them, trying to process what they were saying. "How much money are we talking about?" "The policies are worth about $300,000 combined," Lily said. "Money that's been sitting there earning interest while Marcus and I have been drowning in debt." "What debt?" "You two have good jobs, you live well." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Good jobs? Brian, I was laid off 8 months ago. Lily's part-time hospital work barely covers groceries. We're behind on our mortgage, maxed out on credit cards, and facing bankruptcy." This was the first I'd heard of any of this. "Why didn't you tell us you were struggling?" "Because Mom made it clear she didn't want to help," Lily said, her voice bitter. Every time I mentioned money being tight, she'd change the subject. Now I know why. She was sitting on over $1 million while watching us suffer. "Lily, that's not fair. Your mother didn't know you were in financial trouble." "Didn't she?" Marcus pulled out a piece of paper from his stack. "This is a letter Lily sent to your wife 6 months ago, asking for a small loan to help with our mortgage, $20,000. Your wife never even responded." I took the letter, recognizing Lily's handwriting. It was heartbreaking to read, my daughter explaining their situation, promising to pay back any help, expressing shame at having to ask, and Joan had never mentioned it to me. "I don't understand. Joan never told me about this." "Because she didn't want to help," Lily said, tears starting to flow. "She ignored my letter, avoided my calls when I tried to follow up. I thought it was because you two were struggling too, or because she was disappointed in us. I never imagined she was hoarding money." My head was spinning. How many secrets had Joan been keeping? How many lies had I been living with? "Where did you find out about all these assets?" Marcus answered. "Lily was helping your wife organize papers for taxes. She found some statements that didn't make sense. Payments to insurance companies, property tax bills for addresses we didn't recognize. When she asked about them, your wife got defensive and evasive. So I did some digging," Lily continued. "I found the safety deposit box key in Mom's jewelry box. The next day, I went to the bank. You went through your mother's safety deposit box without permission? I'm listed as a co-signer, Dad. From when she was worried about emergencies a few years ago, she forgot about that detail. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Joan hadn't just hidden money. She'd actively ignored her daughter's plea for help while sitting on assets that could have solved all their problems. Lily, I understand why you're angry, but leaving your mother stranded at a gas station in the middle of the night was the least she deserved, Marcus interrupted. Do you know what it's like to lose sleep every night worrying about losing your house? To have your credit destroyed, your future ruined, while your mother-in-law has enough money to solve everything but chooses to give it to strangers instead? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw the stress lines around her eyes, the weight loss, the exhaustion. She'd been suffering, and I'd been completely oblivious. Why didn't you come to me? If Joan wasn't responding, why didn't you ask me for help? Lily's face crumpled. Because I was ashamed. Because asking your parents for money makes you feel like a failure. And because every time I tried to talk to you about anything serious, Mom would redirect the conversation. Another piece clicked into place. Joan had been controlling our family's financial narrative, keeping me isolated from decisions and even conversations about money. I'd thought she was being responsible, handling the details so I didn't have to worry. Instead, she'd been manipulating all of us. What do you want from me now? I asked. Marcus spoke up again. We want what's fair. Lily is Joan's only child. That money should be her inheritance, not given away to charities. And we want it now, Lily added, before Mom can hide it somewhere else or give it all away out of spite. The demand hung in the air between us. They weren't just angry, they were desperate. And desperation makes people do things they wouldn't normally consider. What if she refuses? Marcus's expression hardened. Then we'll file a legal challenge. Elder financial abuse, breach of fiduciary duty, intentional infliction of emotional distress. We've been researching the options. You'd sue your own mother? Our own mother chose strangers over her own family, Lily shot back. She watched us struggle while she planned to give our inheritance to a hospital that doesn't even need it. They raise millions in donations every year, Dad. They don't need Mom's money. We do. I sat there looking at my daughter, seeing Joan's stubborn streak in her eyes, but also seeing a young woman who felt betrayed by the person who should have protected her most. Neither of them was entirely wrong, but neither was entirely right either. Give me some time to talk to your mother. Let me see if I can make her understand how this looks from your perspective. How long? Marcus asked. A few days, maybe a week. No. Marcus shook his head. We're done waiting. We need an answer by this weekend. And if she says no? Lily met my eyes directly. Then we file the lawsuit on Monday morning, and Dad will win. The lawyer we consulted said cases like this are becoming more common, and courts are starting to take them seriously. I stood up, feeling every one of my 56 years. I'll talk to her. As I walked toward the door, Lily called after me. Dad, I love Mom, I do, but she's made choices that have consequences. If she can't see that, then she'll have to live with what happens next. Driving home, I realized that Joan's desire to protect our family from the poison of money had created something much worse. She'd created a war. And in wars, especially family wars, everybody loses. But there was still something bothering me about Marcus's story, something that didn't quite add up. A software engineer unemployed for 8 months should have unemployment benefits, severance pay, savings. Their financial crisis seemed awfully convenient timing with the discovery of Joan's hidden assets. I was going to have to do some digging of my own before this weekend deadline arrived, because I had a feeling there was more to this story than anyone was telling me. And if I was right, then Marcus wasn't just desperate, he was dangerous. I didn't go straight home after leaving Lily's house. Instead, I sat in my truck in their driveway for 10 minutes, trying to make sense of what I'd just learned. Something about Marcus's story felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what exactly was bothering me. When I finally got home, Joan was waiting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had clearly gone cold hours ago. She looked up at me with desperate hope in her eyes. How did it go? I sat down across from her, not sure where to begin. Joan, Did Lily send you a letter 6 months ago asking for help with her mortgage? The color drained from Joan's face. How do you know about that? They showed it to me. Why didn't you tell me about it? Joan stared into her cold tea. Because I was afraid you'd want to help them. Of course I would have wanted to help them. She's our daughter. With what money, Ryan? Our savings? Our retirement fund? We're not wealthy people. But you had over $1 million sitting in accounts and safety deposit boxes. That money wasn't ours. It was my parents' money. I was the custodian, not the owner. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. Joan, that's not how inheritance works. When your parents died, that money became yours to do with as you chose. And I chose to use it for good instead of enabling Lily's poor financial decisions. Poor financial decisions? Marcus lost his job. That's not a poor decision. That's bad luck. Joan looked up sharply. Is that what he told you? Something in her tone made me pay attention. What do you mean? Marcus wasn't laid off, Ryan. He was fired. Fired for what? Joan got up and went to the junk drawer where we kept miscellaneous papers. She pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to me. After Lily sent me that letter, I got worried, so I did some investigating. Inside the envelope were printouts of online articles, court documents, and what looked like employment records. The top article's headline made my stomach drop. Local software engineer arrested for embezzlement. What the hell is this? Marcus was stealing from his company. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. When they caught him, they fired him and pressed charges. The only reason he's not in jail is because he agreed to pay restitution. I stared at the papers, reading through the details. Marcus had been skimming money from client accounts for over 2 years. The total amount was nearly $60,000. This is why they need money, not because of unemployment, but because Marcus has to pay back what he stole. Joan nodded grimly. And the restitution payments are what's putting them behind on their mortgage. Their financial crisis isn't bad luck, Ryan. It's the consequence of Marcus's criminal behavior. Does Lily know about this? I don't think so. Look at the dates. He was fired in March, but the criminal charges weren't filed until May. The letter she sent me was in April. She probably thought he was just laid off. I felt sick. My daughter had been living with a criminal, trusting him, letting him guide her decisions about confronting her mother. And Marcus had been using Lily's anger and desperation to cover up his own crimes. Why didn't you tell her? Why didn't you show her this? Because I hoped he would tell her himself. I hoped he'd come clean and maybe they could work through it together. Joan's voice was bitter. I was trying to protect her from another painful truth. And instead, you let her think you were the villain. Yes? I thought it was better for her to be angry at me than to have her marriage destroyed by finding out her husband is a thief. I set the papers down, my hands shaking slightly. Joan, you can't keep making these decisions for other people. You can't protect everyone from the truth. I know that now. But Ryan, what would you have done? Would you have destroyed Lily's marriage to save your own reputation? It was a fair question, and I wasn't sure I knew the answer. But I did know that keeping secrets had only made everything worse. There's more, Joan said quietly. More what? More that Marcus doesn't know I know. He pulled another paper from the envelope. He's been gambling. Online poker, sports betting. The embezzlement wasn't just about paying bills. It was about covering gambling debts. The paper was a credit report showing Marcus's financial activity. Multiple cash advances, payments to online gambling sites, loans from companies I'd never heard of, but that sounded predatory. How much does he owe? Based on what I could find, probably another $40,000 or $50,000, maybe more. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process the magnitude of what Joan had uncovered. Marcus wasn't just a man who'd made a mistake. He was someone with serious problems who was dragging my daughter down with him. And you think he's using Lily's anger about the inheritance to try to get money to pay off his debts? I think Marcus saw an opportunity when Lily found those papers. He's been encouraging her anger, feeding her sense of injustice, making her believe that I'm the enemy. Because if Lily gets the inheritance money, he gets access to it too. Exactly. And Lily, who's already stressed and scared about their financial situation, is ready to believe that I'm the cause of all their problems. I thought about the conversation I'd just had with Lily and Marcus. Marcus had done most of the talking, had all the legal research ready, had pushed for the weekend deadline. Lily had been emotional, angry, but Marcus had been calculating. Joan, we have to tell her the truth. She won't believe it, not coming from me. She thinks I'm a liar who's been hiding money while watching her suffer. Then we'll prove it. We'll show her the court documents, the employment records. Joan shook her head. And destroy her marriage in the process? Ryan, she loves him. Finding out he's been lying to her about everything will devastate her, more than losing her relationship with her mother. Joan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I honestly don't know which would hurt her more. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our backyard again. The swing set looked even more forlorn in the afternoon light, a reminder of simpler times when the biggest decision we faced was what to have for dinner. Joan, what if we give them some money? Not the full inheritance, but enough to help with their immediate problems? You mean reward Marcus for stealing and lying? I mean, save our daughter from losing her house while we figure out how to handle the bigger issues. Joan considered this. How much? Enough to catch up their mortgage and cover a few months of expenses, maybe $30,000 or $40,000. And what about the gambling debts? What about the restitution payments? Those are Marcus's problems to solve. Joan was quiet for several minutes, and I could see her wrestling with the decision. Finally, she spoke. If we do this, it has to come with conditions. Lily has to agree to financial counseling. Marcus has to agree to counseling for his gambling problem. And they both have to agree to complete transparency about their finances going forward. And if they refuse, then they don't get the money, and they'll have to deal with the lawsuit and everything that comes with it. I nodded. It seemed like a reasonable compromise, assuming Lily and Marcus would agree to it. There's one more thing, Joan said. If we're going to do this, if we're going to help them, then I want to know that Marcus understands the consequences of lying to my daughter. I want to look him in the eye and make sure he knows that I know what he's been doing. That could be dangerous, Joan. If he's desperate enough, if he's facing serious gambling debts, then it's even more important that he knows he can't manipulate this family anymore. I looked at my wife, seeing a strength in her that I'd forgotten was there. Joan had made mistakes, serious ones, but she'd also been trying to protect our family in the only way she knew how. When do you want to talk to them? Tomorrow. I want to give them one chance to be honest with us before we reveal what we know. And if they keep lying, Joan's expression hardened, then they'll find out that hiding the truth isn't the same as making it go away. And Marcus will learn that threatening my family has consequences he hasn't considered. I realized that tomorrow's conversation wasn't just going to determine the future of our relationship with Lily. It was going to determine whether Marcus continued to control and manipulate my daughter, or whether his house of lies finally came crashing down. Either way, the secrets that had been poisoning our family were about to come to light, and not everyone was going to survive the revelation. The next morning, I called Lily and asked if Joan and I could come over to discuss the situation. There was a long pause before she agreed, and I could hear Marcus in the background asking questions I couldn't quite make out. We'll be there at 2 o'clock, I told her. Dad, if Mom's planning to lecture us about being grateful or patient, save yourself the trip. Just give us an hour, Lily. That's all I'm asking. Joan spent the morning preparing like she was going into battle. She organized all the documents she'd gathered about Marcus, made copies of everything, and rehearsed what she was going to say. I'd never seen her so focused, so determined. Are you sure about this approach? I asked as we drove to Lily's house. What if it backfires? Then at least she'll know the truth. Whatever happens after that is her choice to make. When we arrived, Lily and Marcus were waiting in their living room. The legal papers were still spread across the coffee table, and Marcus had his laptop open again. They'd clearly been preparing for this conversation too. Mom. Lily's greeting was cold but not hostile. Progress, I supposed. Hello, sweetheart. Joan's voice was steady, but I could see her hands trembling slightly as she sat down. Marcus didn't bother with pleasantries. So what's the decision? Are you going to do right by your daughter, or are we filing that lawsuit on Monday? Joan looked directly at him. Before we discuss any financial arrangements, I think we all need to be completely honest with each other. We've been honest, Lily said. We told you about our situation, our debts, everything. Have you? Joan pulled the manila envelope from her purse. Marcus, would you like to tell Lily about your employment situation, the real reason you're not working? Marcus's face went pale, but his expression quickly hardened. I told her I was laid off. The economy's been tough. You were fired for embezzlement, Joan said calmly, and you're currently facing criminal charges. The silence in the room was deafening. Lily turned to look at Marcus, confusion and disbelief written across her face. What is she talking about? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Marcus stood up abruptly. She's lying. She's making things up to deflect from her own selfishness. Joan pulled out the printed articles and court documents, spreading them on the coffee table next to Marcus's legal papers. These are public records, Marcus. Would you like to explain to your wife why you stole $60,000 from your employer? Lily picked up one of the articles, her face growing whiter as she read. Marcus, what is this? It's bullshit, that's what it is. Your mother hired some private investigator to dig up dirt on me. I didn't hire anyone, Joan said. I used Google and public court records. Everything I found is available to anyone who knows where to look. Lily was reading through the documents now, her hands shaking. It says here you were stealing from client accounts for 2 years. It says you agreed to pay restitution to avoid jail time. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, his composure finally cracking. Lily, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Then explain it. Lily's voice was getting stronger, angrier. Explain to me how stealing money from your clients isn't what it looks like. I was borrowing it. I always intended to pay it back. With what money? I interjected. According to these records, you were already behind on payments. Marcus turned on me. Stay out of this, Ryan. This is between me and my wife. No, Lily said, standing up. This involves my parents because you've been using our financial problems to pressure them for money. Money you need because you're a criminal. The word criminal hit Marcus like a physical blow. His face flushed red, and for a moment I thought he might become violent. I made a mistake, okay? I was trying to cover some temporary cash flow issues. Joan pulled out another set of papers. What about the gambling debts? Were those temporary cash flow issues too? Marcus went completely still. What gambling debts? The $47,000 you owe to various online casinos and bookmakers, the cash advances you've been taking to cover losses, the payday loans. Lily sank back into her chair, staring at Marcus like she'd never seen him before. You've been gambling. Everyone gambles a little. It's not a big deal. $47,000 isn't a little gambling, Marcus, I said. That's an addiction. And that's why you really need my mother's money, Lily said, her voice hollow with realization. Not for our mortgage, not for our bills, for your debts. Marcus finally sat back down, his defiance crumbling. Lily, I love you. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen. You stole money, you gambled it away, and then you lied to me about everything. Lily turned to Joan. How long have you known about this? Since you sent me the letter asking for help. I was worried about your situation, so I did some research. And you didn't tell me? Lily's anger was shifting now, spreading from Marcus to include Joan again. I hoped Marcus would tell you himself. I didn't want to be the one to destroy your marriage. So instead you let me think you were ignoring my letter out of selfishness? Joan nodded, tears starting to flow. I thought it was better for you to be angry at me than to have your life torn apart by this. Lily stood up and walked to the window, her back to all of us. The room was thick with tension, and I could see Marcus calculating his next move. Lily, Marcus said finally, your mother's right about the gambling. I have a problem, and I need help. But I also need money to fix the mess I've made. If we don't pay back what I owe, there are going to be serious consequences. What kind of consequences? I asked. Marcus hesitated. Some of the people I owe money to aren't banks. They're not patient with late payments. The implication hung in the air. Marcus wasn't just facing financial ruin, he was potentially in physical danger. And by extension, so was Lily. Lily turned around and I could see she'd come to the same realization. Are you saying we're in danger because of your gambling debts? Not if we can pay them back quickly. That's why I need access to your mother's money. You need it, Joan said sharply. Lily doesn't need it. You've created this problem, and now you want to use my daughter and my family's money to solve it. Marcus's mask finally slipped completely. Your family's money? Lily is your family. I'm her husband. What affects me affects her. Not anymore, Lily said quietly. We all turned to look at her. She was standing by the window, but her reflection in the glass showed a woman who looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past hour. What do you mean? Marcus asked. I mean, I can't be married to someone who lies to me about everything. I can't build a life with someone who steals money and gambles it away while I work extra shifts trying to keep us afloat. Lily, please. We can work through this. People make mistakes. Mistakes? Lily's voice rose. You systematically stole money for 2 years. You've been gambling away thousands of dollars while I've been eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch to save money. You made me hate my own mother because I thought she was the reason we were struggling. She turned to face Joan. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for the things I said, for leaving you at that gas station. I was wrong. Joan stood up and crossed the room, wrapping Lily in a hug that seemed to release months of tension. You don't need to apologize, sweetheart. You were lied to. You were manipulated. Over Lily's shoulder, I saw Marcus watching them with something that looked like panic. He was losing control of the situation, and desperate people do dangerous things. This is very touching, Marcus said, his voice turning cold. But it doesn't solve the immediate problem. I still owe money to people who don't care about our family drama. I stood up and moved closer to where Joan and Lily were standing. That sounds like a threat, Marcus. It's not a threat. It's reality. Whether Lily leaves me or not, whether you all forgive each other or not, I still have debts that need to be paid. And if they don't get paid, people are going to come looking for their money. Let them, Lily said, pulling away from Joan. I'm not responsible for your debts. Marcus laughed bitterly. You think you can just walk away from this? You think they care whether you knew about the gambling or not? You're my wife. This house is in both our names. My problems are your problems, whether you like it or not. The threat was clear now. Even if Lily left Marcus, she'd still be vulnerable to his creditors, and Marcus knew it. How much time do we have in? I asked. Before what? Before these people, you owe money to lose patience. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe less. I looked at Joan, and I could see she was thinking the same thing I was. We were going to have to help, not because Marcus deserved it, but because Lily was in danger as long as she was tied to him. But help was going to come with conditions that Marcus wasn't going to like, and consequences he definitely wasn't expecting. The silence in Lily's living room stretched out like a held breath. Marcus was watching us, waiting to see if his veiled threats would work. Lily looked exhausted, caught between fear and disgust. Joan was studying Marcus like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. I made a decision. Marcus, I need you to step outside with me for a minute. Man to man. His eyes narrowed. Why? Because we need to discuss how this is going to work going forward. Marcus glanced at Lily, then back at me. Fine. We walked out to their back patio, leaving Joan and Lily inside. I could see them through the sliding glass door, Joan holding our daughter while she cried. So what's your offer? Marcus asked, trying to sound confident. Here's what's going to happen, I said, keeping my voice calm and level. You're going to take the $50,000 from Joan's inheritance money. You're going to pay off your gambling debts and your restitution. And then you're going to disappear from Lily's life forever. Marcus laughed. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You're going to sign divorce papers giving up any claim to marital assets. You're going to move out of this house within a week, and you're never going to contact Lily again. And if I refuse? I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken of his gambling debt records. Then I sent copies of all the evidence Joan gathered to your probation officer, your former employer's legal department, and every one of your creditors. I'll also make sure they know exactly where to find you. The color drained from Marcus's face. You wouldn't. Try me. I spent 30 years in construction management, Marcus. I know how to deal with people who threaten my family. Lily won't go along with this. She loves me. Lily loves the man she thought you were. The real you? The lying, stealing, gambling addict who put her in danger? She's already done with that version. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and I could see him calculating his options. $50,000 isn't enough to cover everything I owe. Then you'll have to figure out the rest yourself. Get a job, sell your car, whatever it takes. But you'll do it somewhere far away from my daughter. This is extortion. No, Marcus, This is justice. You've been extorting my family for months, using Lily's love and trust to cover up your crimes. Now you get to face the consequences." Through the glass door I could see Joan and Lily talking quietly. Lily was nodding, wiping her eyes, looking more like herself than she had in months. "If I agree to this," Marcus said finally, "how do I know you won't come after me later? Because once you're gone, you'll be irrelevant. Just make sure you stay gone." Marcus stared at the ground for a long moment. "I need the money by tomorrow." "You'll have it. But the divorce papers get signed first, and you pack your things tonight." "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore." We went back inside where Joan and Lily were sitting close together on the couch. Lily looked up when we entered, and I could see she'd made her decision. "Marcus," she said, her voice steady now, "I want you out of this house tonight." "Lily, please, we can work through this." "No, we can't. I can't trust you anymore. I can't build a life with someone who lies about everything." Marcus looked around the room, realizing he'd lost. "Fine, but I'll need some of that inheritance money to get started somewhere else." "You'll get $50,000, I said. "That's it. Take it or leave it." "50,000? That barely covers what I owe." Joan spoke up for the first time since we'd come back inside. "Then you shouldn't have gambled away more than you could afford to lose." Marcus's face flushed with anger. "This is all your fault, you know. If you'd just helped us when Lily asked, none of this would have happened. If I'd given you money 6 months ago, you would have gambled it away too," Joan replied calmly. "The only difference is you would have come back asking for more." Marcus started to respond, but Lily cut him off. "Stop. Just stop. Mom was right to be suspicious. I see that now." She turned to Joan. "I'm sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I believed his version of events over yours." "You don't need to apologize, sweetheart. You were manipulated by someone you loved. That's not your fault." The next few hours were a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Joan contacted a lawyer to draw up divorce papers. I called a locksmith to change the locks on Lily's house. Marcus packed his belongings in sullen silence, shooting resentful looks at all of us. By evening, it was done. Marcus signed the papers, took his $50,000, and left. I watched his BMW disappear down the street and felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. "Do you think he'll actually stay away?" Lily asked. "He'll stay away," I said. "Men like Marcus are cowards. They only pick fights they think they can win." Joan was quieter, thoughtful. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning," she said to Lily, "about the money, about Marcus, about everything." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was trying to protect you. I thought if I could handle everything quietly, you'd never have to be hurt by it." Lily shook her head. "Mom, you can't protect me from the truth. I'm not a child anymore. I know that now, and I promise no more secrets." 3 weeks later, we had a family dinner at our house. Just the three of us, the way it should be. Lily had moved back into her house and was seeing a counselor to help process everything that had happened. Joan had set up the inheritance donation she'd planned, but also established a trust fund for Lily's future, money that would be there when she was ready for it, with no strings attached. "Any word from Marcus?" I asked as we cleared the dinner dishes. "His lawyer called yesterday," Lily said. "Apparently he moved to Nevada, got a job in Las Vegas." Joan snorted. "A gambling addict moved to Las Vegas? That should work out well for him." "I don't care anymore," Lily said. "That's his choice to make." Later, as Joan and I sat on our back porch watching the sunset, she leaned against my shoulder. "Do you think Lily will be okay? She's stronger than we gave her credit for. She'll be fine." "I never thought I'd be grateful for someone's greed," Joan said. "But if Marcus hadn't been so desperate for money, we might never have discovered what he was really like. And Lily might have spent years being slowly destroyed by his lies." Joan was quiet for a moment. "Ryan, do you forgive me? For keeping all those secrets?" I thought about it. Joan had made mistakes, serious ones, but she'd made them from love, not selfishness. And in the end, her caution about money had protected our family from someone who would have taken everything we had. "I forgive you. But no more secrets, Joan. We're a team. We make decisions together." "No more secrets," she agreed. 6 months later, I got a call from a detective in Las Vegas. Marcus had been arrested again, this time for check fraud. He'd apparently learned nothing from his experience with our family and had moved on to targeting elderly casino patrons. I didn't tell Lily about the call. Some information isn't worth sharing. But I did allow myself a moment of satisfaction, knowing that justice had caught up with Marcus after all. Lily was dating someone new now, a teacher she'd met at the hospital where she volunteered. He was kind, honest, and had no idea our family had any money beyond what we earned. Joan had insisted on running a background check on him, which made Lily laugh. "Trust but verify," Joan had said. "That's my new motto." As for the inheritance money, Joan had donated most of it as planned. The children's hospital received $400,000. The animal shelter got $200,000, and $50,000 went to a foundation that helped families dealing with gambling addiction. "I want something good to come out of what Marcus put us through," Joan had explained. The rest of the money, about $300,000, went into a trust for Lily. She could access it when she turned 40, or earlier if she needed it for something important like buying a house or starting a family. But not for a husband's gambling debts, Joan had specified in the trust documents. Looking back, I realized that Joan's desire to protect our family from money's corrupting influence had been proven right, just not in the way she'd expected. The money hadn't corrupted us, but it had revealed someone who was already corrupt, someone who was willing to destroy the people he claimed to love in pursuit of easy wealth. Sometimes the best way to protect your family isn't to shield them from the truth. Sometimes it's to make sure the truth comes out before it's too late to matter. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money. It's the freedom to discover who they really are when they think nobody's watching. Marcus had shown us exactly who he was, and we'd made sure he couldn't hide behind lies anymore. That was worth more than any inheritance.